You drove. That's all you did at first, just drove. The city faded behind you, replaced by open roads and quiet skies. You didn't have a destination. You just needed to get away. The noise of the day, the arguments, the pressure, the expectations, it all felt too much. So you got in your car, turned on some soft music, and let the wheels do the thinking. It wasn't the first time you'd done this, but something about tonight felt different. Like maybe this drive would be more than just escape. As the sky turned from blue to orange, casting long shadows across the road, you started to feel something shift inside you, a sense of stillness. Of being alone without feeling lonely. You took a deep breath and let it out slowly, trying to release some of the weight you'd been carrying for weeks. And then, just as the sun dipped lower, you saw him. He was standing by the side of the road, holding a duffel bag and looking like he didn't know where he was going either. He looked tired, but not in the way most people look tired after a long day. This was deeper, like he carried something heavy too. You slowed the car without thinking. Something about him pulled at you, made you want to stop even though logic told you not to. You rolled the window down and called out, "Hey, you okay?" He looked surprised, like he hadn't expected anyone to stop. He hesitated, then nodded. You couldn't see his face clearly in the fading light, but you could tell he was young. Maybe early 20s. You opened the passenger door and gestured toward the seat. He stepped forward slowly, like he wasn't sure if this kindness was real or just another trick of the world. Finally, he climbed in. You didn't ask questions. Not yet. You just started driving again, not knowing that this moment, this simple act of pulling over, would change everything. The night settled around you like a quiet promise. Liam sat beside you, silent. You could feel his presence without looking at him. He hadn't said much since he got in, just a soft, "Thanks," and a glance that didn't quite meet your eyes. But there was something about him that made the silence okay. Like he understood what it meant to carry things you couldn't explain. The sky was turning deep orange now, with streaks of purple bleeding into it as the sun dipped lower. The air coming through the window smelled like earth after rain and distant pine trees. You glanced over at Liam. His hands were resting on his lap, fingers curled slightly inward, like they were used to holding onto something tightly. His clothes were simple, jeans, a hoodie that looked a little too big for him, and worn-out sneakers. Nothing fancy, but somehow, everything about him felt real. Honest. He caught you looking and gave a small smile, almost shy. You smiled back without thinking. It felt strange how easy that was. "You okay?" you asked, keeping your voice light. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, just tired." You understood that. Tiredness came in different forms. Some people were tired from work or long days. Others were tired from fighting battles no one else could see. You wondered which kind of tired he was. "Where were you headed?" you asked, not pushing, just curious. He looked out the window for a moment before answering. "Nowhere, really." There was something in his voice that made your chest tighten a little. That same weight you carried, it was in his words too. You didn't press. Instead, you kept driving, letting the silence settle between you again. It wasn't awkward. It was calm, comfortable, even. As the road curved and the trees thickened around you, you realized you had no idea where you were going. And for once, that didn't bother you. You weren't trying to escape anymore. You were just moving. With someone who seemed to be doing the same. Liam shifted in his seat again, pulling his hoodie tighter around him. You noticed how he always seemed to curl inward slightly, like he was trying to take up less space. Not out of shyness, more like habit. Like he'd learned over time that it was safer to stay small. The dashboard lights flickered softly as the car hummed beneath you. A few more miles passed before he finally spoke again. "I haven't talked to them in 3 days, he said quietly. You glanced at him, waiting for more. He didn't offer anything right away, just stared out the window like the trees held some kind of answer. "Who?" you asked gently. "My parents." The words landed between you like a stone dropped into still water. You didn't say anything, just let it sit there, giving him space to decide if he wanted to keep going. He did. "They found out," he said after a pause. "About me." His voice didn't crack, but there was something in it, a tightness, like he was holding back more than he was saying. You nodded slowly, your hands tightening slightly on the steering wheel. You knew that story. Or at least, a version of it. What happened? You asked, keeping your tone soft. He exhaled through his nose, like he wasn't sure where to start. They didn't take it well. I mean, they said things. Things that hurt, but not in the way people usually expect. He looked down at his hands. Not yelling or screaming, just disappointment, coldness. Like I had broken something they couldn't fix. You swallowed hard. That kind of pain was worse than anger. Anger could be understood. Disappointment cut deeper because it made you feel like you weren't just different, you were wrong. I packed my stuff that night, he continued. Didn't say goodbye. Just left. You didn't know what to say, so you didn't try to fill the silence with empty words. Instead, you reached over and placed your hand lightly on his arm for a second, just enough to let him know you were listening. That you cared. He gave a small nod, almost imperceptible, but it told you he felt it. I thought leaving would make me feel free, he said after a while. But mostly, I just feel untethered. That word hit something inside you. Untethered. It was exactly how you'd felt most of your life. Like you were floating, never quite landing anywhere. Always searching for something you couldn't name. I get that, you said finally. Sometimes freedom feels like weightlessness. And sometimes, it just feels like falling. Liam turned to look at you then, really studying your face. There was something in his eyes, recognition, maybe even relief. You ever tell anyone? He asked. You hesitated. It was an easy question, but not an easy answer. I told one person, you said after a moment. A long time ago. She was my best friend. We were 16. I remember sitting on her bedroom floor, staring at my shoes, barely able to breathe. When I finally said it, she just hugged me. Didn't ask questions. Didn't act surprised. Just held me. Liam's expression softened. That's rare, he said quietly. It is, you agreed. And honestly, it made everything else easier. Well, not easier. Just survivable. He looked back out the window, watching the dark blur of trees pass by. I think I always hoped someone would understand, he admitted. Even if I never said it out loud. You smiled faintly. Maybe that's why we find each other. Because we're looking for the same thing. He didn't respond right away. Just sat there, letting your words settle over him like a blanket. Then, without turning, he said, thank you. For what, he didn't specify. Maybe for listening. Maybe for stopping. Maybe just for being here. You didn't ask. You just nodded and kept driving. The stars above were bright, scattered across the sky like someone had spilled glitter over black velvet. There was a soft hum from the tires on the road, the occasional chirp of insects in the fields beyond the trees, and the quiet rhythm of your breathing mixed with Liam's. You kept driving, the miles stretching behind you like memories you weren't ready to look back at. He had fallen silent again after talking about his parents, but it wasn't the kind of silence that felt heavy anymore. It was softer now, like he had said enough for tonight, and maybe that was okay. You didn't push him to talk more. Instead, you let the music fill the space between you. A slow acoustic song played through the speakers, the kind that feels like it was written just for nights like this. You could feel the weight of the day slowly lifting off your shoulders, like gravity had decided to loosen its grip for a while. Liam shifted in his seat again, pulling his legs up slightly and resting his head against the window. He looked tired, not just physically, but emotionally. Like he had been carrying something for so long that finally putting it down left him drained. You glanced at him out of the corner of your eye. You should sleep if you want, you said quietly. I'm not going anywhere. He gave a small chuckle, eyes still closed. Neither am I, apparently. You smiled faintly, keeping your focus on the road. Good. A few minutes passed before he spoke again, voice low and drowsy. Do you ever miss being a kid? The question caught you off guard. Not because it was strange, but because it was honest in a way that made you think. Sometimes, you admitted. Not because everything was easier, but because things felt simpler. Like, even when life was confusing, there was still this belief that everything would work out. That someone would fix it. Liam nodded slowly. Yeah, I remember thinking my parents would always be the ones to make things better. Even when they couldn't. There was something sad in the way he said it, not bitter, just resigned. Like he had accepted that some things couldn't be fixed, only carried. I used to write letters, you said after a pause. When I was younger. Letters to my future self. I'd imagine who I'd be, where I'd live, what my life would look like. Liam opened his eyes a little wider, turning his head slightly toward you. What did you say? You laughed softly, shaking your head. Most of it was ridiculous. I thought I'd be a famous writer living in Paris or something. But one thing I always wrote was, I hope you're happy. I hope you found people who understand you. He was quiet for a moment, then whispered, did you? You didn't answer right away. You let the question settle in your chest, weighing it like something fragile. I don't know if I'm there yet, you said honestly. But I think I'm closer than I've ever been. Liam watched you for a second, then gave a small smile. Me too. You both stayed quiet after that, letting the words hang between you like a promise. Eventually, Liam yawned and shifted again, curling into himself slightly as he pulled his hoodie tighter. His breathing slowed, and you realized he was falling asleep. You turned the volume down on the music, not wanting to disturb him. The car felt warmer now, like the silence between you two had somehow filled the space with something safe. You kept driving, letting the night stretch out around you like something sacred. The gas station had come and gone, the cold air outside replaced by the warmth of shared quiet inside the car. Liam had drifted off again, his head resting against the window, one hand curled loosely around the edge of his hoodie. His breathing was soft and even, like he hadn't realized how much he needed this until now. You didn't wake him. He looked peaceful in a way that made you think peace didn't come easily for him. So you kept going, letting the miles pass quietly beneath the car. Eventually, though, you started feeling the weight of your own tiredness. Your eyes blinked slower than usual, and your shoulders felt heavier with each passing mile. You knew better than to push it. You weren't doing anyone any good if you fell asleep at the wheel. You scanned the road ahead, looking for signs of life. A gas station, a diner, anything where you could stop for a bit. Just long enough to stretch your legs, grab something to drink, maybe find a place to park for a while. And then you saw it, a small gas station sitting alone by the side of the road, its bright lights cutting through the darkness like a beacon. There were only a few cars parked outside, and the building looked worn but welcoming. You pulled into the lot slowly, careful not to jolt Liam awake too suddenly. The headlights dimmed as you turned off the engine, and for a moment, the silence felt louder than anything else. Liam stirred, blinking sleepily. Where are we? He asked, voice low and rough from sleep. Gas station, you said softly. I thought I'd grab some water. You should probably use the bathroom before we keep going. He nodded slowly, rubbing his face with both hands. Yeah, probably a good idea. You grabbed your wallet and stepped out first, stretching your arms above your head as the cool night air hit your skin. It felt good, like the kind of air that wakes you up without being harsh. Liam got out after you, yawning and pulling his hoodie tighter around himself. He looked smaller somehow now that he wasn't leaning against the window, more vulnerable in the open space of the parking lot. You okay? You asked as you walked toward the entrance. He gave a small nod. Yeah, just weird waking up in a gas station parking lot. You chuckled. Trust me, it's not the weirdest place I've woken up. He raised an eyebrow. That bad? You smirked. Let's just say I've had nights where I ended up places I never planned on. He laughed softly, shaking his head. Somehow I believe that. You pushed open the door to the store, the bell above it ringing lightly. The inside was warm, filled with fluorescent lighting and the smell of coffee and old chips. A man behind the counter glanced up at you, barely acknowledging your presence before going back to flipping through a magazine. You grabbed 2 bottles of water and a couple of snacks, something quick and easy. Liam followed you silently, picking up a candy bar and handing it to you when you reached the counter. You paid without saying much, exchanging a brief nod with the cashier before stepping back outside. The night air was colder now, sharper. You handed Liam his water and took a long sip of yours, feeling the cold slide down your throat like relief. So, Liam said after a moment, unwrapping the candy bar. Where exactly are we going? You looked at him, then out at the empty road stretching in both directions. Honestly, no idea. He smiled slightly, taking a bite of his candy. That's kind of terrifying. And kind of exciting, you added. He considered that for a second, then nodded. Yeah, maybe. You leaned back against the side of the car, watching the trees sway slightly in the breeze. What would you do if you could go anywhere right now? He thought about it, chewing slowly. I don't know. Somewhere warm. Somewhere nobody knows my name. You tilted your head. Like a fresh start. He shrugged. Something like that. You looked at him then, not just at his face, but at everything about him. The way he held himself, like he was trying to be invisible. The way his eyes sometimes searched for something they couldn't find. The way he seemed both lost and searching at the same time. I think you'll find it, you said quietly. He met your gaze, surprised. Find what? A place where you belong. He didn't answer right away. Just looked at you, like he was trying to decide if he believed you. Then, finally, he said, do you think you already have? You smiled faintly, looking back out at the road. Maybe not yet, but I think I'm closer than I've ever been. Liam nodded slowly, like he understood exactly what you meant. For a moment, neither of you spoke. Just stood there under the flickering lights of the gas station, two strangers who were starting to feel less like strangers. And in that moment, it didn't matter where you were going. Because wherever it was, you were going together. The night felt deeper now, quieter, like the world had exhaled and finally settled into stillness. You got back in the car, the warm glow of the gas station fading behind you as you pulled onto the road again. Liam was quiet too, but it wasn't the silence of distance. It was the kind that felt full, like something unspoken was growing between you. The radio was off this time. No music to fill the space. Just the soft hum of the engine and the occasional rustle of fabric as Liam shifted beside you. You drove for a while without saying much, letting the rhythm of the road take over. Trees lined both sides of the highway, their shadows stretching long under the moonlight. Somewhere out there, an owl called into the dark. You could almost feel the pulse of the night around you, calm, steady, endless. Liam broke the silence first. I used to imagine what it would be like, he said softly, staring out the window. To just leave. Not just my house. Everything. You glanced at him briefly before returning your focus to the road. What stopped you? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Fear, mostly. And guilt. Like I owed them something just because they gave me life. You understood that feeling better than you wanted to admit. There was a time when you thought the same thing, that staying meant being strong. That walking away meant weakness. But now, sitting here with him, you weren't so sure anymore. Sometimes love doesn't mean staying, you said quietly. Sometimes it means protecting yourself enough to walk away. Liam turned to look at you then, really looked. His eyes were softer now, not guarded like they had been when you first picked him up. He nodded slowly, like your words had landed somewhere deep. You ever feel like you're starting over? He asked after a pause. All the time, you admitted. Like every day is a chance to be someone new. Or maybe just someone real for once. He smiled faintly at that, a small, tired thing. That's kind of beautiful. You chuckled. I didn't think I was poetic. You're not, he teased. But you're honest. That's rarer. You let that settle between you, smiling to yourself as you kept driving. Eventually, you took an exit you hadn't planned on, following a gut feeling more than any real direction. The road curved gently, leading you toward a small town tucked between hills and trees. Streetlights flickered on one by one as darkness deepened, casting golden pools of light across empty sidewalks. This place looks like it fell out of a dream, Liam murmured, watching the scenery pass by. It does, you agreed. Maybe that's why we ended up here. He didn't ask what you meant. Maybe he already knew. You parked near the edge of town, where the road met a stretch of open field. The sky above was wide and clear, scattered with stars that shimmered like distant memories. You both stepped out of the car, the cool night air wrapping around you like a blanket. Liam walked a few steps ahead, stopping at the edge of the road and looking out at the horizon. You followed, standing beside him in silence. For a while, neither of you spoke. You just stood there, side by side, watching the world breathe. Then, without looking at you, Liam said, "Thank you for not asking me what happens next." You smiled slightly. Because I don't know either. He let out a quiet laugh. Yeah, me neither. And somehow, that was okay. Because sometimes, not knowing where you're going is the only way to find out who you're supposed to be. You looked up at the stars, letting the weight of everything, the past, the present, the uncertainty of tomorrow, settle in your chest like something familiar. Liam turned to face you fully now, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then, softly, he said, "Do you ever get the feeling that tonight changed things?" You looked at him, really looked. At the way his shoulders weren't hunched anymore. At the way his voice had lost some of its hesitation. At the way he was standing here beside you, not trying to disappear. I think tonight reminded us of something we already knew, you said. He tilted his head slightly. Which was, that we weren't meant to be alone. His breath caught for just a second, like your words had touched something inside him he hadn't realized was there. Then, slowly, he nodded. Yeah, I think I needed to hear that. You smiled. So did I. And in that quiet town beneath a sky full of stars, something shifted between you, not suddenly, not dramatically, but deeply. Like two pieces of a puzzle finding their place. And for the first time in a long time, you both felt like you belonged. The road stretched out ahead again, dark and endless. You didn't get back in the car right away. You and Liam just stood there for a while, letting the night settle around you like a secret only the two of you shared. The stars above were bright, scattered across the sky like someone had spilled silver dust over velvet. There was no rush, no need to move, just the quiet hum of the world breathing around you. Eventually, Liam turned and walked back toward the car, his steps slow but sure. You followed, feeling something shift inside you, something warm and unfamiliar. Not fear, not hesitation, something closer to hope. You got in first, starting the engine with a soft click. He slid into the passenger seat beside you, still quiet, still thoughtful. But now, the silence between you felt different. Like it held more than just space, it held meaning. You pulled away from the edge of town slowly, not because you were unsure of where you were going, but because you wanted to give yourself time to feel everything before the next part began. The road stretched out ahead again, dark and endless. You drove without speaking at first, just listening to the rhythm of the tires on pavement, the occasional rustle of wind through the trees. It was peaceful. Not perfect, not easy, but peaceful. Liam leaned his head back against the seat, eyes closed but not asleep. His face looked softer now, less guarded. Like whatever weight he'd been carrying had lightened just enough for him to breathe easier. You glanced at him every few minutes, watching the way the moonlight caught the curve of his jaw, the way his chest rose and fell with each steady breath. There was something about him that felt like home, even though you barely knew him. Even though your lives had only just collided by chance. And maybe that was the point. Sometimes, people don't find each other when everything is figured out. Sometimes, they meet in the middle of the mess, when neither of them has all the answers. And somehow, that's exactly what makes it real. You ever think about what comes next? Liam asked suddenly, voice low but clear. You kept your eyes on the road as you answered. All the time. He opened his eyes then, turning his head slightly to look at you. What do you want? That was a big question. A dangerous one, because once you say it out loud, it starts to feel like a possibility. And possibilities can be terrifying when you've spent so long believing nothing will ever work out the way you hoped. I want to stop pretending, you said finally. I want to live my life like I'm allowed to take up space in it. Like I'm not always apologizing for being who I am. Liam was quiet for a moment, absorbing that. Then he said, I want that too. You glanced at him then, really looking. Seeing not just the boy in the passenger seat, but the person who had climbed into your car with nothing but a duffel bag and a heart full of hurt. Who had shared pieces of himself with you without expecting anything in return. Who had let you see him, not just his pain, but his strength. I think we're both getting there, you said softly. He smiled faintly, nodding. Maybe. You drove for a while longer, letting the conversation settle between you like something fragile but real. Then, without warning, Liam reached over and placed his hand lightly on top of yours, which was resting on the gearshift. It was a small gesture. Simple, unplanned, but it meant everything. You didn't pull away. You just let it stay there, warm and grounding, like an anchor in the storm of everything uncertain. Neither of you needed words in that moment. The silence said more than either of you could have explained. Because sometimes, touch is the loudest kind of truth. You kept driving, hand in hand, not knowing exactly where this would lead. But for the first time in a long time, you weren't afraid of the unknown. Because whatever came next, you wouldn't be facing it alone. And neither would he. The sky had begun to lighten at the edges. You kept driving, the miles slipping beneath your wheels like pages turning in a book you weren't ready to finish. Liam still held your hand, fingers loosely intertwined with yours, resting on the gearshift like it had always belonged there. His breathing had slowed again, steady and soft, and for a moment you thought he might be falling asleep. But then he shifted slightly, turning his head toward you. "I don't know what this is," he said quietly, voice barely above the hum of the engine. "But I don't want it to end." You looked at him then, not just because he was speaking, but because he was saying something real. Something honest. And maybe that was the most beautiful part of all. "I don't either," you admitted. He smiled faintly, eyes reflecting the glow of the dashboard lights. "That's kind of terrifying, isn't it?" You chuckled softly. "Yeah, but it's also kind of amazing." And it was. Because sometimes, life doesn't give you answers. It gives you moments, ones that feel like they're meant for you, even if you don't know why. Moments where someone sees you not just for who you are, but for who you could be. And sometimes, those moments come wrapped in silence, in shared glances, in hands held in the dark. You kept driving, the sky slowly beginning to lighten. The stars were fading now, giving way to the first hints of morning. A new day was coming, whether either of you were ready for it or not. Liam exhaled, watching the horizon as the first streaks of orange and pink painted themselves across the sky. "I used to think happiness had to be loud," he said after a while. "Like you had to earn it somehow. Like you had to fight for it so hard it left scars." You glanced at him, letting his words settle before responding. "Maybe sometimes it does," you said. "But sometimes it just finds you. In the quietest places. When you least expect it." He nodded slowly, like he was trying the idea on for size. "And sometimes," you added, voice softer now, "it stays." He looked at you again, really looked this time. And in that moment, something passed between you, not just understanding, but something deeper. A promise, maybe. Or at least the possibility of one. The sun broke over the horizon, casting golden light across the fields that stretched out beside the road. The world was waking up, stretching itself into a new day. And so were you. Not fully. Not completely. But more than you had been yesterday. More than either of you had been before tonight. If you made it this far, thank you. This story was about two people who found each other when they needed it most. About how sometimes, love doesn't come with fireworks or grand gestures, it comes in the form of someone who sees you. Who listens. Who stays. If you're watching this and feeling alone, if you've ever felt like you didn't belong or like you were too much or not enough, please remember, you are not broken. You are not wrong. You are not the things people tried to make you believe. There is someone out there who will see you for who you are. Who will hold your hand in the dark and tell you that everything will be okay. Not because they know for sure, but because they'll stand beside you while you find out together. And until then, keep going. Keep driving. Keep believing that something better is waiting just around the next bend. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need it today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And thank you for never giving up.